Hello, I'm Dwayne Falk, President and CEO of City Utilities. On April 29, sustained winds of over 90 miles per hour swept through the northwest part of our community. While no tornado was reported, the strength and duration of those winds caused catastrophic damage to our electric system, pulling down trees, snapping utility poles, and bringing down power lines. As a result, more than 50,000 customers lost electricity. Today, we're going to answer some of the most common questions we've received following the recent storm. I'm joined today by Warren Brooks, Vice President of Electric Operations. Warren, can you start by describing the damage that occurred on April 29?
Sure. So as you mentioned, it was a high wind event, extreme wind event, and with an electric system that is predominantly overhead, it caused a lot of damage to our system. It was the largest event we've had since the '07 ice storm, so nearly 20 years. We had multiple substations down, several transmission line segments down, and significant damage to our distribution system, including multiple feeders locked out and large uprooted trees all over our service territory.
Warren, when there's a damage this large and widespread, how do we decide where to send crews first?
So the first thing we're going to always keep in mind is that public safety is our first priority. So the first thing we start responding to are those calls of lines down across the roadways, lines down across vehicles. So that's the first thing we do, is send folks out to make the scene safe. So then we move into a response plan prescribed in our emergency response plan, which lays out the procedures for how we prioritize the restoration. So again, public safety is top of mind. So those are the first locations we go to, are the facilities that are critical for public safety and utility operations. So that's going to be things like hospitals, control centers, communication facilities, emergency response locations that provide those services for the community. Once we work through that group of priorities, then we move on to the other areas that are also meant to keep the public safe and comfortable. So that's going to be things like other medical facilities, schools, shelters, things of that nature. So once we've gotten through the facilities that are required to restore service and keep the public safe, then we move on to the locations that also provide, the most community benefit. Things such as grocery stores and commercial and industrial locations. Once we work through those, say, 3 batches of priorities, then we move on to deploying resources where the largest batches of outages are, so that we can make the biggest reductions that we can.
Okay. So this is a prolonged restoration event because of the extensive damage. What are some of the reasons why restoration can take so long?
So in this case, particularly why it's taking so long is because we had really heavy winds. We had a lot of damage to our distribution. It was widespread. Sometimes we have outages that we can have thousands of people out of power, but it's centralized to one location. Maybe a substation's down. We can have 5,000 to 10,000 people out of power with that, but the problem is one area, so we can respond more quickly. In this case, it's all over the system. A lot of our network is in people's backyards. There's a lot of tree trimming needed ahead of time. So down from a substation perspective, down to individual services and weatherheads, the damage just covers all of those portions of the system. So until every single service is restored and all repairs have been made, either on the utility side or the customer side, we can't call the restoration complete. That's why this one's taken so much longer than some of the other ones in the past.
Mm-hmm. As customers start to do their own restoration of their property by clearing debris, they may find some limbs on power lines. What are the dangers of encountering those power lines, even if they're de-energized?
So the primary danger is that they can be re-energized at any time. Mm-hmm. The down lines may be power lines, they may be communication lines, but at any time, if that line hanging down is blown into lines that are still in the air and energized, and that piece of wire becomes energized. We have occurrences where generators are improperly installed, and so that can re-energize some of those down facilities and pose additional danger to the public and our workers. So anytime there's a down line, whether it's communication or power, no one should ever make contact with that. They should stay away, call 911, report a down line to City Utilities, and then we'll send the people that are qualified to interact with those facilities that are down.
Warren, one of the questions we receive is, my neighbor has power, but I do not. Why? How can that occur?
So it can occur for a variety of reasons, but I think simply put, the distribution network is very complex, and it consists of substations, feeders, fused laterals. So something that's very common is that we can have a feeder, a circuit coming out of the substation that runs along the roadway, but then we have what we call fused laterals that run into extended neighborhoods, for example. So one side of the street can have a fused line that goes behind the houses on that side of the street, and the other side can have the same thing. So we can have a situation where one of those laterals, maybe there was significant damage and there's wires broke and that fuse is blown, and on the other side that damage didn't happen, or it's a matter of refusing but everything's still in the air. We do that because that prevents one problem on one particular piece of line taking out the whole circuit. So it's a whole system, it's a complex network of protective devices meant to isolate problems to specific locations. Another reason that can happen is perhaps there's one transformer in one backyard that still has to be replaced even though all the lines and poles are in the air. Well, that transformer can serve anywhere from 4 to 8 houses. So it may be that your neighbor's got lights on because they're on a different transformer than you. So it really is a matter of what portion of the system is damaged. Sometimes everything on the utility side is fine in the air, but the service drop to the customer's house is actually what's been damaged or down, or perhaps their weatherhead is damaged, so the utility system is fully up and functional, but the connection to the customer's premise isn't.
Okay, Warren, some customers have said that they haven't seen a line crew in their neighborhood for a while, or maybe one has come and left. What's the process of assessment and restoration, and how does that relate to that question?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, the first step is addressing anything that has to do with presents imminent threat to the public. So the first thing that we do when we spin up these efforts is we send what we refer to as scouts, individuals out throughout the city to find those locations where there appears to be, we've got reports of something dangerous. So their job is to go out, make sure the scene is safe, and then assess what is needed to make the repair. Because we want to make sure we employ the appropriate resources. If it's something that an individual, say a troubleshooter, can fix on their own, there's no need for us to send an entire line crew for that repair. What we really want to avoid is sending in an entire line crew consisting typically of 3 to 4 individuals, 2 to 3 trucks, only to find out they don't have the equipment they need to make that repair, or they don't have the materials. So the first thing we do is send individuals out to assess, quantify the damage, and then they're going to leave that location once it's safe, and then let us know what is needed to actually make the repair. So that's in general why there's going to be several or multiple visits to a specific location.
Warren, we encourage customers to sign up for the My Account app so they can receive personalized messages during outages. What types of messages will they receive?
Yeah, first I want to say this is one of the benefits of the features that we realize from having an automated metering infrastructure system, or an AMI system, and that a lot of that notification is able to be automated. So the first thing that will happen is we will receive that outage, and customers will automatically get a message that we've acknowledged the outage. The next step from that is to assess that outage. So I mentioned earlier that we send scouts. We send people out to find out what the problem is. So the next message a customer will get, once we assign that to someone to look at, is that an assessment is underway. So that's what that means. So when that resource arrives on site, it may be that that's something they can fix while they're there, or they need to assign that work to a line crew because there's damage that's needed, there's line construction needed. So depending on what they find when they get there, customers will receive one of 2 messages. They may receive that the outage has been restored. Please let us know if you continue experiencing with your electric service. But if they find that repairs are needed, then the status will change to repairs underway because that's been assigned to a crew for construction. If that happens, then that's the point at which an estimated time of restoration, an ETR, can be provided, because it's really not until those crews show up that they can really identify, is this something we can fix in an hour, or is this going to take 8 hours? So a caveat with that, though, to keep in mind is, while we have a system that provides a lot of automatic notifications, we may not always receive that outage, so it's important that customers remember that they should always report their outage, and our systems will identify whether those duplicate reports, so we're not doubling our efforts if it comes in that way. So we always want to make sure that customers remember that they should always report their outage either through their My Account or calling into city utilities. The other thing to mention with this particular outage is it is such a large-scale outage that we really have to provide restoration times in terms of the entire event rather than isolated specific locations. So that's really why we've been talking about this in terms of potentially days for restoration, because it's all around our system and we really can't pinpoint every single location and provide that level of detail when the outage is so widespread.
Okay. The outage map on our website is especially daunting in this type of large-scale restoration event. Can you tell us more about the outage map and how it might be useful to customers?
Sure can. So the biggest benefit of the outage map is providing a sense of the scale of the outage. So in some cases, it might be in a location or two, but in this situation, we have outages all across our city. As we started this, we were at 50,000 outages. So in other words, that map does give that sense of, wow, this is a widespread outage situation, but the effect of that is that it looks like one big mass of red. Something else we do with that map, and it's really to protect our customers, is we don't provide really detailed, specific location of where that outage is. So sometimes customers may ask, why do you show my specific address or my specific outage? And that's intentional because we have to acknowledge that there are bad actors. There's always going to be bad actors, and we don't want to provide that level of detail that those folks might be able to take advantage of maybe an entire neighborhood's out, for example. So we really try to keep it high level intentionally so customers can see where the outages are located at generally and the scale and scope, but not so precise that it puts them in danger.
Warren, we've seen significant tree damage due to the 90 miles per hour plus winds experienced in this storm. Can you tell us about our city utilities vegetation management program and how we work to keep our system as resilient as possible throughout the year?
So yes, sure can. So we trim trees year round, distribution and transmission. We have crews deployed throughout the city 365 days a year, essentially working to make our system more reliable, both for our customers, but also for our employees. You know, our folks are the ones that have to answer those calls anytime, day or night, when there's an outage related to whatever. But in this particular question is about tree trimming. Trees are taking lines out and causing outages. People have to come in to fix that. So from a work-life balance perspective, it's important for us that we continue our investment in vegetation management to make a system more reliable. Unfortunately, this is a situation where we're nearly 100-mile-an-hour winds. We have trees that are being uprooted from the other side of the road, falling over into our facilities. There's really no way to trim to that extent to prevent those types of outages related to trees.
Warren, after an outage event like this, especially a large one, we're often asked, why don't we just bury all of our electric lines? I know we've researched and discussed that. Can you tell us more about that process?
Sure can. And the two primary reasons for that really just boil down to cost and ownership. So what do I mean by that? Well, cost is pretty intuitive. We regularly perform estimates on what it would take to convert the entire electric system to underground, and it is in the billions of dollars. That's not just our system, that's every single service drop to every single location, homes or businesses would have to be converted. But with that in mind, we do look for opportunities to be more strategic with those projects. So whether it's a commercial development, the majority of our new installations are underground. We have a lot of redevelopment areas going around our city, so whenever those projects come up, we look for opportunities to partner with the developers to convert those overhead facilities to underground. We also have a lot of projects that we partner with the city and the county and the state for roadway improvements, interchanges, intersections, and we do try to take advantage of those projects as well to convert some of our older overhead infrastructure to underground. As a matter of fact, two great examples of that recently. There's a Target at West Bypass and Sunshine under development. That was a major redevelopment project. All of the overhead electric along the front has been converted to underground. Renew Jordan Creek's another great example of that. There's a lot of overhead to underground conversions going on there. Something to keep in mind. So my next point was about ownership. So City Utilities maintains an overhead electric network throughout the city, but we're not the only ones that are on those poles. So until the only way for the poles to go away is when every entity on those poles, so what I mean by that is we have a few different communications companies in our service territory that are attached to those poles as well. So until we get to a point where all parties attached to those poles make that investment to convert, we can't remove the poles. And that's what we really want to avoid, is a lot of investment to convert electric to underground, but still having poles and wire in the air because the communication companies didn't make the same investments.
Thank you, Warren. I appreciate you being here today, answering our customers' questions and providing additional information. I'd also like to thank all of our employees and contractors and mutual aid crews who are still out in the field restoring our system under grueling and challenging conditions all day and all night until every outage is restored. And especially I'd like to thank our customers and community for your patience during this outage event. Thank you.